Huh? 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 Let's talk about that. Hey guys, this is Andrew with another Sabbath School short, and this week we're on lesson number 5, and it is titled Jesus as the Master Teacher. So we're going to be looking at Jesus and seeing what we can learn about him and what valuable truths that we can take away from his ministry here on earth. So let's look at the memory text from this week, which is 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 6, and it says this: "For it is the God who commanded light to shine out of darkness, who has shone in our hearts to give the light of the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ." I'm jumping into Sabbath afternoon's lesson with this quote. It says, "At the time of Jesus' birth, humanity lay mangled and bleeding in need of a healing vision of God. It is as though humankind pleaded, 'O God, could we see your face?' In sending his son to this planet, the Father sent the master teacher on a mission to show humankind his face. Ever since, we have had the wondrous privilege of beholding the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ." So all throughout Jesus' ministry here on this earth, there was this theme that Jesus kind of always talked about. He spoke of glorifying the Father and showing the world who he was. And so looking at the life of Christ, what can we learn from the master teacher, Jesus, as he fulfilled this mission that God gave him perfectly? So that's what we're going to talk about. Let's jump into it with Sunday's lesson, which is titled Revealing the Father. And the short little quote that I really liked, it said this: "If we wish to know the Father, we must listen carefully to what the master teacher says about him, and we must watch the master teacher as well. The Father is seen in the Son." You know, there's so many times that I feel like that people have questions like, who is God? Or people that don't know God, there's like, I acknowledge that maybe there's this higher being, but I don't know who he is. I don't know if he's good, if he's evil. I don't know what it is. And there's this question a lot of times of, who is God? Who is he? Is he real? Who is he? Guys, the way that we see God, the way that we know God is through Jesus Christ. He's the one who showed it to us. He's the one who showed the Father perfectly to us. If we see Jesus, we've seen the Father. Jesus said that himself. If we see him, we've seen the Father. He perfectly revealed the Father to us. And Monday expands on this idea, which is titled Revealing the Father Continued. And the quote that I really like there is actually from Ellen White, Education, page 74 to 76 that the lesson brought out. And it said this: "Christ came to restore this knowledge. He came to set aside the false teaching by which those who claim to know God had misrepresented him. He came to manifest the nature of his law, to reveal in his own character the beauty of holiness." And so Ellen White says that Jesus came to set aside all those false teachings by people who claim to know God, but really were actually misrepresenting him. And Jesus came to correct that, to show the world exactly who God is. So when we look at the life of Christ, when you read the Gospels, you see Jesus loving people, you see Jesus serving people, you see Jesus healing people, you see Jesus just an outpouring of love to people. You can know that God is that same exact person. God is love. He wants to heal. He wants to serve. This is the kind of God that we is. And we need to take that picture of God, right? We need to take that picture of God and read it into every single story that we read about in the Bible about who God is. Because sometimes there's those stories where you read and sometimes you struggle like this God doesn't seem, if you don't know who God is, it can sometimes seem a little bit tough, a little bit rough maybe. But if you study the life of Jesus, you realize that God is love. 1 John says that God is love. Jesus showed that through his actions. God is love. You take that idea and you put it into every single story and you say, okay, this story is a little bit difficult. It's a little bit hard to read, but the God of love is here and I need to find it. And so you come with that biblical mindset of God is love and you read that into every story so you can know that God is love, because that is what Jesus showed to us. That's what the master teacher showed to us, that God is love. And God never changes. He is constant always. And he has always been love and will always be love. And so looking over at Tuesday's lesson, which is titled Reading the Master Teacher's Mind, It says this: "We are reminded that there is much to learn from the master teacher, Jesus. We learn from the messages that he shares during his earthly ministry. We learn from the miracles that he performs and the way that he acts towards others. We may seek to model our own relationships with others after his great condescension and by dwelling on his willingness to exchange the glories of heaven for a manger." What a lesson for us. You see, the story of Jesus, not only did Jesus show us who God was, he also taught us and showed us how we need to treat the other people around us with that love, with that service. I mean, the last Sabbath School quarter, we talked all about that. We talked all about making friends for God and talking about how we need to be loving other people, showing them Jesus, introducing them to Jesus Christ. But Jesus, by studying the life of Christ, you can pick apart and pick apart these stories and put yourself in the story and see, wow, Jesus loved people. I should do the same. And you can see all the different kinds of activities that Jesus did with people and the way that he demonstrated God's love. And we can take that and apply that to our lives so that we can know how to love other people more effectively. And speaking of that, looking over at Wednesday's lesson, it kind of brings about a concrete example of this, and it's titled The Master Teacher of Reconciliation. A key word, reconciliation, something that Jesus showed a lot, something that God showed to us as sinners. We have been reconciled to God. The quote that I really like there, it says, "Again, though we are not simply to be consumers of the joys of reconciliation, we are to learn from the master teacher. In his incarnation, Jesus participated in the work of reconciliation, and we too are invited to participate in it. God has reconciled us to himself through Christ." Amazing truth. And now we, with Paul, are given the ministry of reconciliation. They bring about Paul because he wrote that ministry of reconciliation, 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 18, that little phrase comes from. But it's this idea that God has reconciled us to himself, not just so that we may bask in the joys of that and shut off everybody else around us. No, he wants us to have a ministry of reconciliation, to study the life of Christ, to see how he did it, and take that and apply it to our lives so that we may go out and do reconciliation and bring other people to Jesus, bring other people to God, and reconcile those other maybe relationships too that have been broken. Maybe you have someone in your life right now that you've been cut off from, or that you hurt in some way, or they hurt you in some way. God's calling you to reconcile with them, to study the life of Christ, to see how you can do that, to see how you can effectively reconcile with each other, with the people around you, and also bring those other people into a reconciliation with God. And Thursday's lesson, which is titled The Master Teacher's First Pupils. The quote I really like from there, it's kind of long, but it's really good. It says, "Before he has spoken his first parable or performed his first miracle, the master teacher is worthy of our worship because of who he is. To fully appreciate the later teaching ministry of Jesus, we must join these early pupils, the wise men, in their worship of the master teacher. The one whose teachings we admire is more than a wise educator. He is God come to dwell with humankind. Christian education is rooted in the worship of Christ." The lesson talks about when Jesus first came to the earth as a baby, and that his first pupils were the shepherds, Mary, Joseph, the wise men who showed up a little bit later. But these people that Jesus first interacted with as a little baby, and even in that moment, Jesus was teaching them about who God was, that he didn't come as this huge, mighty, conquer, glorious thing. He came as a baby, a humble little baby. And I think he did that to teach us a very valuable lesson. Once again, just showing who God is, that he's humble and loving enough to step down from the glories of heaven and take on humanity to be with us and become one with humankind. And that is a love that I can never comprehend and understand, but that's who God is, and that is who Jesus showed to the world as he lived here on this earth. And wrapping up in Friday, the further thought section, there's a quote from Ellen White from the book Education, page 282. She says this: "As the highest preparation for your work, I point you to the words, the life, the methods of the Prince of Teachers. I bid you consider him. Here is your true ideal. Behold it, dwell upon it, until the spirit of the divine teacher shall take possession of your heart and life." And then she quotes 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 18. And it says, "Reflecting as a mirror the glory of the Lord, you will be transformed into the same image." Friends, Jesus is our master teacher, and we are to behold him. We are to seek him. We are to learn from him. We are to study his life so that we can be more effective ministers for him, so that we can be evangelists wherever we're placed, so that we can go out and share the good news, just like Jesus did, and tell about who God is, that he's love, and he loves humankind. He created them. He loves them so much that he has saved them. He's brought them back to himself. We once were alienated from God, but now we are brought back into his very near presence. And Jesus showed that. He is the avenue, the agent in which that was brought to us. And we can't do anything but thank him and learn from him and behold him and be changed by him. Friends, I hope you enjoyed this week's Sabbath School short, looking at the life of Jesus and talking about that he is our master teacher. Please give us a thumbs up for this video, like this video, subscribe to Advent Blueprint so you can keep up with all the videos we're releasing. And also, drop in the comment section down below. We'd love to have a discussion with you. What is the biggest thing that you've learned from studying the life of Christ? As you've looked at Jesus and as you have seen his life here on this earth by reading the Gospels and learning more about him and seeking him, what is the biggest thing that you've learned from those studies? What is the biggest thing you've learned about who God is from the life of Christ? We'd love to have a discussion with you. But that brings us to a close. Hope to see you guys here next week on next week's Sabbath School Short. See you then.